The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement as a sleek black car rolled slowly down a quiet street. Inside sat Ethan Caldwell, a man everyone knew but few truly understood. A millionaire widower, founder of one of the largest architecture firms in the state, Ethan had built towers that kissed the clouds, yet inside, he lived in ruins. 3 years had passed since his wife, Claire, died in an accident that had left him both broken and terrified of feeling again. His world had become mechanical. Meetings, deadlines, silence, repeat. The only thing that kept him tethered to life was his 5-year-old daughter, Grace, a bright, curious child with her mother's laugh and her father's stubbornness. Grace had a new nanny, Sophia. She was soft-spoken, gentle, and impossibly patient, the kind of woman who carried calm wherever she went. She was young, but there was something ageless in her kindness. Grace adored her, and although Ethan barely noticed it at first, she slowly brought light back into the house. Laughter in the halls, the smell of cookies in the kitchen, bedtime stories whispered under warm blankets. But one evening, something caught Ethan's attention. Sophia left work early, looking nervous, clutching her old coat. When she thought no one was watching, she slipped out quietly, taking a bus instead of her usual ride. Ethan didn't know why, but something inside him stirred, worry, maybe curiosity. Against his better judgment, he followed her. The bus rumbled out of the city and into an old part of town, a place of cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. Sophia got off near a rundown building, its paint peeling and windows fogged. She disappeared inside. Ethan parked nearby, his heart oddly heavy. He wasn't suspicious, not exactly, but he wanted to understand who she really was. After a few minutes, he followed her in. The building smelled of dust and old wood. Down a narrow hallway, he heard voices, children's laughter. He turned the corner and froze. There was Sophia, sitting cross-legged on the floor of a dimly lit room, surrounded by a dozen children. They were dressed in worn clothes, holding paper plates of food she'd clearly brought. She was helping a little boy read a book, while another girl braided her hair. Ethan stood there silently, watching her smile. It wasn't the polite smile she wore at work. It was real, radiant, alive. He noticed the cracked heater, the thin blankets, the small refrigerator that hummed weakly. It hit him. These weren't her kids. She was helping the homeless children of the neighborhood. Sophia looked up and gasped when she saw him. "Mr. Caldwell," she exclaimed, standing quickly, embarrassed. I didn't know you were here." He stepped closer, still stunned. "What is this place?" Her eyes dropped. "It's an old community shelter. It used to have funding, but it closed last year. I come here a few nights a week to bring the kids food and help them study. They have nowhere else to go." Ethan's voice softened. "You've been doing this alone?" She nodded. "I can't afford much, but they need someone. I know what it's like to feel forgotten." He looked around again. The broken furniture, the hope in those children's eyes. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Sophia shrugged. "People like me don't do it for attention, sir. We just do it because someone has to." For a long moment, Ethan couldn't speak. The world he lived in, of wealth, of endless meetings and shallow smiles, felt small compared to the quiet power of what he'd just seen. That night, when he got home, he couldn't sleep. He walked through the empty halls of his mansion, the polished marble floors, the tall ceilings, and realized how cold it all was. Grace's laughter echoed faintly from her room, and suddenly he knew what he had to do. The next morning, Sophia arrived to work as usual, her cheeks pink from the cold. She looked surprised when Ethan met her at the door. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I followed you last night." Her eyes widened. "You what?" "I saw the shelter. The children, everything." She turned pale. "Please don't fire me, Mr. Caldwell. I'll never leave Grace alone." He interrupted gently. "Fire you?" "Sophia, I came to thank you." Tears shimmered in her eyes as he continued. "You reminded me of something I forgot. That love isn't about wealth or power. It's about showing up. You've been showing up for those kids when no one else did." She blinked, speechless. "I want to help," he said simply. "No, I want us to help. Grace and I." That afternoon, Ethan drove her back to the shelter. this time with a van full of supplies: blankets, heaters, food, books, toys. When the children saw him, they froze, unsure. But then he knelt down beside them and smiled, and something inside the room shifted. Days turned into weeks, and soon the shelter became a real project. Funded, repaired, alive again. Ethan used his company's resources to rebuild it completely, naming it Claire's Haven, in memory of his late wife, a woman who had always wanted to help children, too. Through it all, Sophia stayed by his side, not because she sought credit, but because her heart simply wouldn't let her leave. One evening, after the shelter's reopening ceremony, Ethan found her standing outside, watching the sunset over the new playground. "You know," he said softly, "when I followed you that night, I thought I was uncovering a secret." She smiled faintly. "And did you?" He nodded. "Yes, but not yours, mine. I discovered how empty my life had become, and how much brighter it could be with you in it." She turned to him, eyes glistening. "Ethan," he took a slow breath, "I don't want to just rebuild buildings anymore. I want to rebuild lives, starting with mine. With you." Sophia's tears fell freely then, and before she could reply, little Grace ran up and hugged them both, giggling. "Daddy, can Miss Sophia stay with us forever?" Ethan looked down at her and smiled. "That's exactly what I was hoping for." And in that moment, under the fading gold of a city once too lonely, a millionaire widower, a selfless nanny, and a little girl who had lost her mother found what they were all missing. Not wealth, not fame, but a home built on kindness, courage, and love that had quietly waited for its chance to be found again.